Right,
Like, come
exactly.
on. And so in 2020, that's birthed your podcast. And I love what you said, intimate conversation with women of color. And so that actually piggybacked into you becoming a speaker. So what made you decide, okay, I'm conquering this podcast thing, and now I'm going to do this speaking. So what made you evolve into speaking as well?
Yeah, so good question. But I want to kind of go back to what you said as far as the whole podcasting and being, being vulnerable and whatnot. So for 2+ years, my podcast was pretty much me interviewing guests, right? No problem. I can moderate a panel, I can interview guests, no problem. Well, recently, I started working with a podcast coach. And one of the first things she said, and I knew it was coming, she said, you need to start doing solo recordings. People need to hear your voice. And what was crazy is here I had this podcast providing a platform for other women to use their voices, and then I was hiding behind it. And when she said what she said, my heart like dropped. It was a fear that it crept back up. I'm like, oh my God, I knew I needed to do it because I had already said I'm going to start doing it. But when she like put it out there, then to the universe, like spoke it, it was like, and I said, but I'm going to do it. So actually since November, I've been recording and releasing, publishing solo episodes of me sharing my podcast journey.
Introducing Community App. Community App is an all-in-one app that lets you easily create and promote any type of class in your local community. The login/sign up page where you can sign up or login. Details that are needed for sign up: name, email address, password, location, interest. You can select as many as possible: interest, boxing, workout, painting, jogging, and so on. After sign up, connect your Stripe account, or you can skip it and connect it later. Welcome to your dashboard. Things you can do from dashboard. You can create class, see class requests, switch theme, settings, check your earnings. Visit www.community.com to get started, or download the Community app from Google Play Store or App Store.
Thanks to her, my podcast.
We got it. Reaching 350 million. They tuning in.
CTR Media Network is now accepting new podcasters to join our growing network that's reaching 350 million global listeners. Have you heard? CTR Media Network offers podcast production, podcast training, distribution, and product placement. Book us for your next event or schedule an interview with CTR Media Network podcasters today. To learn more, go to ctrmedianetwork.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tina Ramsey Show and Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tina J. Ramsey, and I'm so excited to have with us tonight's featured guest. You know the Tina Ramsey Show is all about motivating you, sharing knowledge, having upbuilding conversations centered around business, wellness, education, and life. We introduce you to some of the most amazing standout entrepreneurs and influencers who are truly making a positive impact in the world. And to keep together with that theme, we have yet another amazing entrepreneur, fellow podcaster in the building to share with you all about why they do what they do. And her name is Deneen L. Garrett. She is passionate, she is innovative, and she is an executor of PIE. And she elevates the voices of women of color, and she empowers them to live a dream of lifestyle. She also is a motivational speaker. She is a creator and host of the Women of Color, an intimate conversation for women of color. So without further ado, she has a long, extensive resume, but I want you to meet her yourself. So what we're going to do, we're just going to bring on Deneen right now. So Deneen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tina. Dr. Tina. Hello, everybody.
All right. So I'm happy to have you here on today because, like I said before, I'm always happy having fellow podcasters, even having women of influence and figuring out why. What was your why? Why do you do what you
Yeah.
do? And so, with everything that I see that you do, that you already have on your plate, why did you start a podcast?
Yeah. So, okay, my story is an interesting story. So, I was a diversity and inclusion professional, and one of my segments was LGBTQ plus, and I was preparing some of my peers to do a leadership workshop. My peers happen to be white, and so I'm like, well, where are the women of color? And so the next year, which was 2017, I created a panel. In an intimate conversation with LGBTQ plus women of color and allies to provide them a platform to use their voices. So I moderated that panel in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And so someone asked me at the end of 2019, what's next? And I said, well, I think I'm going to do a podcast. So fast forward to 2020, I'm like still thinking about doing a podcast, but just thought about it. And so as it got close, it just was a gnawing thought. And so I, reached out to a few people, said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What are your thoughts? And then there was something that was holding me back. And so once I learned that I had a fear of being vulnerable, I called a thing. And then I ignited it and I launched my podcast on Good Friday of 2020. So it's ended up being a podcast for women of color in general. And my why is that elevating the voices of women of color, providing us a platform to use our voices.
Love it, love it. And it's very interesting that you say you had realized what was holding you back.
Yeah.
When you think about podcasting, people think it's just easy speaking in the mic or coming, well, now with the new era of podcasting, which is video podcasting, people think it's easy to mash that go live button or mash that button to record, but it's really not. It's a form of you have to release and be transparent and you sharing of yourself. And so for someone who used to maybe keeping things closed in, not letting everybody know what's going on, that can be a very scary situation. And I know personally for me, I used podcasting when I first started so long ago. I use it as a means of therapeutic. It helped me therapeutically to be able to have an audience that did not really know me, that was in my immediate circle, where I felt comfortable with sharing some of my life struggles, but also sharing with them how they can overcome. So I totally understand. And I love the fact that you took what you was doing in the career to a different level. And then, because you said diversity and inclusion, and then you took it, and then the people wanted more. They was like, well, what are we doing next?
Right.
Like, come on. And so in 2020, that's birthed your podcast. And I love what you said, intimate conversation with women of color. And so that actually piggybacked into you becoming a speaker. So what made you decide, okay, I'm conquering this podcast thing, and now I'm going to do this speaking. So what made you evolve into speaking as well?
Yeah, so good question, but I want to kind of go back to what you said as far as the whole podcasting and being vulnerable and whatnot. So for 2+ years, my podcast was pretty much me interviewing guests, right? No problem. I can moderate a panel, I can interview guests, no problem. Well, recently, I started working with a podcast coach. And one of the first things she said, and I knew it was coming, she said, you need to start doing solo recordings. People need to hear your voice. And what was crazy is here I had this podcast providing a platform for other women to use their voices. And then I was hiding behind it. And when she said what she said, my heart like dropped. It was a fear that it crept back up. I'm like, oh my God, I knew I needed to do it because I had already said I'm going to start doing it. But when she like put it out there into the universe, like spoke it, it was like, and I said, but I'm going to do it. So actually since November, I've been recording and publishing solo episodes of me sharing my podcast journey. And out of, let's say, my top 5, three or four of them are of my solo. So and I shared that with her, and she's like, yeah, that's telling you something. People want to hear you. They want to hear your voice. So after I did the first one, I was good. Right. And it's just like, okay, I can do this, no problem. But it was like, I'm telling you, my heart dropped when she said, you need to go ahead and start doing more solo. And I did it. Right. It was another fear, that where you feel the fear and you do it anyway. That was another one of those experiences. So I'm very proud of myself for doing that. Because like I said, I can interview you all day, every day, right? No problem. Panel, in video format, in person, however, but that solo, because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And I'm like loving that journey, that part of my journey. So you asked as far as the speaking. So the speaking was something I was already doing. I created a lot of panels and moderated a lot of panels in the workplace. And so it was time now. I retired in June. So I retired in June and I launched a business, and the business was going to focus on consulting. So consulting companies who were interested in creating development programs for women of color, because that's what I was doing 18 months prior to retiring. So I was going to consult, and then, friends and colleagues were like, you should coach because you have that gift. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that as well. Speaking and podcasting was just a given. I was already planning to do that. But then fast forward to October of last year, I was at Afros and Audio, which is a podcast conference for Black folks. And I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and really lean into the podcasting and the speaking, because I've already built the foundation there. So I've already built that foundation. So let me really just tap into it. And when you talked about like the work and stuff that's behind it, like for me initially for those 2+ years, it was really just me push and play. It was really me, like, getting the guests, coming up with my questions, and then recording and then publishing, right? And, and a little bit with putting it on social media. I was doing that and it was easy. But I knew there was more to it and I wanted to level up. And that's why I went ahead and started working with a podcast coach, because I knew that there's so many layers to it and so much more that I could be doing and should be doing, which I'm doing now. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. If you want to do it at a certain level, and or if you're trying to reach certain goals, then you do have to put a lot of time into it. And also you have to put some money into it. But again, if you're just wanting just to push record and then publish, yeah, you can do that. So again, it's speaking. So I decided that that's going to be my focus. And so I've been applying and being accepted into various podcast conferences, on panels, and just having those different speaking opportunities. And so it was like a natural progression. But here's something that's interesting, because I had forgotten about this. And then I remembered a few months ago, back in my early 20s, I think I was the MC for a youth event at church, a young adult. And the pastor's wife interrupted me, stood up and said, "You have a future in speaking." Now, this is X number of years ago. She said it. She put it out there. And I'm like, oh, okay, really didn't think much of it. But now I'm back to it, right? And even when I first did the panels, I'm like, okay, I'm like, manifest anything else about it. But now I'm kind of leaning into it a little bit more. And I'm remembering that she spoke that, a number of years ago. And so, yeah, it's podcasting and speaking is my, number 2. It's really number 1 because they're pretty much the same. Right. And that's what I'm really leaning into.
Well, I know personally for me, it is essential when you want to grow and scale up to have a podcast coach. And I am a podcast coach myself. And so I understand the tremendous ground that you have to go on. And it's ironic, the way that you started is the way that I had to grow in 2 years ago. So when I first started, I started out as a total solo show. And it was not hard for me to come up with the topics because I was a public speaker. So it was easy for me to do that and engage and go live and hit the button because I went live all the time anyway. But what was hard for me was to start having the conversations and having people coming on to the show. And so even though I am a conversationalist, but it's just different because you want to make sure you pull out the points that really would spotlight your guests in the best light and also elevate them so people will want to join or connect with your guests because they're amazing. And so we kind of like went the opposite, but we arrived at the same destination. And so when I'm listening, so I said, okay, I'm the opposite, but now we're in the same place. Okay.
Yeah,
and so podcast coaching, when you, like you said, I agree with you. Once you get to a certain level, it's more than just posting on social media, your podcast. It's more than just getting it on distribution outlets. It is really a job, a career. Once you start figuring out and making sure that you have proper placement and positioning for your podcast. And that's one thing that I tell my students or my clients is that you don't want to just be a one-hit wonder. You want to make sure you resonate and stay in the minds of your listeners and potential listeners day in and day out. How can you do that? And so we work through that based upon whatever their goals are and whatever their level of success is, because everybody's level or definition of success is different. But let's pick it back to your speaking. So this speaking was spoken over your life in your 20s, and you finally realized in October of last year what was going on. Like, wait, hold up, this is not new. Right. I heard this before. And so now you're deciding that you're going to go all in. You invested in your podcast experience, your podcast knowledge, even though you have had a level of success with interviewing people. Then you realize, hey, your podcast coach was like, you leaning too heavily on your guests. You need to lean on you, but you got to do it yourself. And so you was being coachable, so you listen. And now you're seeing how it's birthing and reminding you of something that was past said over your life, which now led you into speaking on stages, getting yourself connected with diversity and inclusion platforms like you mentioned Afro. Let me make sure I say it right. Afro what?
Afros and Audio.
Yes, Afro and Audio, and I heard of them before. And making sure that you help women of color, and that just makes sense that you will align yourself with that organization and then build and scale up your podcasting and speaking. And the fact that you decided to stay in the I would say on the roadway of podcasting and sharing your story is pretty remarkable. I love the journey of people's lives. When I hear them speak it, it's like I can just visualize and see your little roadmap just going boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
And I was like, she went back to square one, which was really her destination in the beginning. And it's just amazing how our journey, our life just works itself out, even when we're not realizing it's working itself out for us. Absolutely. So when I think about your journey and when I think about what you're doing and how you are empowering so many women of color, providing a platform still for us to be able to speak our voice and own our truth, in the limelight, you are also doing that for yourself, which I love, because we tend to forget ourselves, but you didn't because you're doing yourself. So when you're thinking about, you mentioned about moderating and participating in numerous podcast events and conferences. So with that being said, what advice would you give aspiring podcasters and even speakers, since you are a speaker yourself, that will help them kind of break into the industry and to make an impact like you're definitely doing?
Yeah. So another thing, another focus of mine is that I empower women of color to live a dream lifestyle. And so that's something that I've been doing for myself since January of last year. And so where that comes from is, how, the beginning of each year, somebody said, what's your word? And so my word, I said, it's going to be live. And I had a tweet, somebody tweeted about going beyond dream cars, dream houses, and dream lifestyle. So I declared for 2022 that live was my word and live a dream lifestyle was going to be my focus. And so each person defines differently what that means to them. For me, it's the major component is travel. I love to travel. So if I want to just hop on a plane and go to New York to a museum, I'm going to do that. Right. And as a matter of fact, I did do that in December. But what I have, what I follow is my 3Ds, which is dream, decide, and drive. So to answer your question or to give advice to anyone who's listening and they're wanting to do something, first dream about what it is that you want to do. Envision that, see it, what is that thing that you want to do? What is that thing that, how you want your life to be? And then make a decision. Okay, now I want my life to look like XYZ, right? And again, for me, it was travel. That was the main component. Then drive towards it. Do what you need to do to make it happen. So for me, like I said, I was working and I knew that I was going to retire because I had made that decision in January 2021. So it was really just a countdown. And, and so I'm living that life. I'm sharing that with other people. So I'm letting them see what living a dream lifestyle looks like for me, right? As I'm encouraging them to do the same thing, which again is what I'm encouraging those who are watching, those who are listening. Again, dream, decide, and then drive towards that thing that you want to do. So specifically around a podcast, it depends on, how you're dreaming about your podcast. What do you want that podcast to look for? It truly is simple to just do a podcast. It is to do a podcast. Again, it depends on what level you want to do it at, right? Turn it into a show, sponsors and all of that kind of stuff. That takes different. That takes work. That takes effort. Quality, a number of followers. But if you're just wanting to get your voice out there, you're wanting to use the platform, as you said, as a way to speak and to share what's going on in your life, to share what's going on in your heart. Some people, self-care. However, if you just want to use it for those basic, you can, and you truly can. You can go, and start something. It doesn't have to cost, and it really would just cost your time. But again, if you want to level up, or you want to do it, that you want to get sponsors, then in order to get sponsors, you need to have followers. And they usually want a certain number of followers. And in order to get followers, you have to have that quality content, so on and so forth. So my recommendation, if you want to do it at scale, if you will, then definitely probably start off with a podcasting coach. So start off with somebody who, they're doing it, right? So they have a product that you like, and they do offer and avail themselves to help people. Not everybody that has a podcast is willing to help. Because a lot of people are kind of figuring it out for themselves, and or they're not in it for that thing, right? So there's lots of communities for us. I was at a different podcast event, so I was at Podfest, and and that's majority white space, and there were meeting other Black women, and they didn't know about like WOC podcasters. They had no clue that existed. They didn't know anything about the Black Podcast Association. They didn't know anything about BIPOC podcasters. And so that's another thing, get connected to community. So when you meet somebody, start following them, connect with them, and then like, hey, what else is out there? Because we are better and stronger together.
I 1000% agree with you on that, because it just depends on what they want to do. Like you said, it's just breaking it down. And the thing is, it's okay to change your mind. Because when I started out, it was solely therapeutic for me, just a way for me to kind of purge my emotions and just share. And then later on, what happened, people started listening. I just did it and walked away from it. I had no idea that people was actually listening to it. Just felt good to release until Spotify reached out. This was so many years ago. Spotify reached out and said, hey, we like your content. Can we add it to Spotify? I thought it was a hoax, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, right. Okay, this must be a scam. Well, I was like, well, if it's a scam, it's a scam. If it's not, it's not. I mean, they said, only thing I gotta do is say yes or no. And so I said yes. It wasn't anything that I had to do. I didn't have to pay. And so I said yes. And then we have Spotify. We always have Spotify because we love music in my home. And I said my podcast name and it played my stuff. I almost fell out. I was like, it's for real, So then later on, it started changing, and I started learning how to the power of podcasting, how to sponsor, how to, and start building and scaling. And so sometimes you start off one way and then you go into another direction when you realize when you evolve and grow as a person.
Absolutely.
But on that note, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a commercial break and we're going to be back in a moment with the amazing Deneen.
CTR Media Network is now accepting new podcasters to join our growing network that's reaching 350 million global listeners. Have you heard? CTR Media Network offers podcast production, podcast training, distribution, and product placement. Book us for your next event or schedule an interview with CTR Media Network podcasters today. To learn more, go to ctrmedianetwork.com.
Our CTR Media Network sponsors.
A special shout out to our platinum sponsors, Eleanor and Leroy Mason from happyandhealthy.global. Happyandhealthy.global is a health and nutrition business that educates and provides essential natural wellness products to build your health and wealth. To find out more of what they have to offer to you, go to happyandhealthy.global.
Thank you to our CTR Media Network sponsors. To learn more about our sponsors and CTR Media Network, go to ctrmedianetwork.com.
And just like that, we are back. And I come along with someone else whom you might be asking. It's the amazing Deneen. So welcome back to the show after our little small commercial break. And before we went on commercial break, she was really breaking down the different levels of podcasting. Some people, they start a podcast like I did in the beginning, all them eons ago, to just be therapeutic. But then later on, you may decide that you wanted to use the power of podcast in order to position you in different areas of your life. It can be business, it can be public speaking, it can be a nonprofit. Literally, podcasting is one of those rare things that you can actually use that can help every single kind of niches out there. Anybody who has a niche, podcast can help you with your niche, because who do you need? You need people to listen, to connect, to grow, and to share. And so I love podcasting for the simple fact of the way that it commands attention, and it also connects people in a way that is unlike anything else. Even though radio is good, because I already had my radio show and all that in TV, but podcasting is something I like to call the great equalizer. So with that being said, that's this podcast that you have, and being able to moderate in various different groups, having the forethought and the knowledge to know, hey, I'm taking this to the next level, invest in me a coach. I'm going to make sure I'm on these right stages to speak and to network and to grow. And so what other things do you have that for women of color, because I know you're very specific on what you offer? Do you offer coaching for women of color? What do you offer? Do you have your own thing with books? Because I'm very interested to know, how can we get a piece of the women of color and intimate conversation? How can we get a piece of it?
Yeah, so other than subscribing and listening and all those good things, you can also hire me to speak. So yeah, I am available to consult and coach by request only. So, I was sharing with you how when I retired, I started the business, the focus was on consulting, then coaching, and then I decided that I really wanted to put my energy into the speaking and the podcasting piece. And so I'm still available for the other components. However, those components are not ones that I'm like marketing. Those are ones that, again, you reach out, look, make me an offer I can't refuse, that type of thing, right? So I'm open to doing that. So yes. And books not.
Oh no, I see a book in your future. If maybe not yet, but it will happen, because I could just see it. Anywho, you'll do it when it's the right time. When it's the right time, you'll see when it's the right time, because any speaker, any coach, you will notice that over time, you will either have some sort of ebook, or you will have some sort of book, because you have the demand for your knowledge, demand for your time is going to be limited. So you're going to need a way to massively help a large amount of people without having to conform or lose your time. And I know that you love to travel, so your time is very valuable. So therefore, you're gonna need another outlet. You're gonna need another outlet.
I know. And you know what? I love that, and I received that, Dr. Tina, because so many people have said write a book, and I'm like, on what? You know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, da da da. I'm like, well, why don't you put that manual or put that outline together for me, and then I'll fill in the blanks. But it's like, you know how you said how we do when we don't necessarily see things about ourselves, or we're constantly doing. Like, I'm a type of person that I'm constantly in motion. So I'm not necessarily thinking about, well, what steps did I take? I just get it done. Right. And, you know, and like with the whole, you know, my 3Ds, those came later. Like, I didn't come up with that initially. It was like, okay, well, how do I explain, or how do I teach somebody else to do what I've done? And so I thought about, well, what did I do? Right. So I thought about what I did, and that's how I came up with my 3Ds. And that's pretty much how I operate. It's like, I do it, like I can think and say, I'm going to do this thing, and, you know, here are some steps, but I don't necessarily articulate it always. Sometimes, yes, sometimes, you know, people are hearing a strategy. Other times people are just, they're hearing, you know, me operationalizing it, you know, putting it in operation, right? Making it happen. So, so yeah, that book will come, because you're absolutely right. My time is precious. And so I will have to find another outlet for people to get that knowledge.
Oh yeah, I already know. I mean, myself, just like you, it was brought to me about books and different stuff like that. And I was like, you know, I might collab and do a collaborative book with someone, but mine myself, I don't know. And just look, this year I'll be launching my own book, own self-titled book, even though I'm part of a whole lot of other people's books, including Dr. Cheryl Wood's book. But you know, you will do it, because now I'm getting ready to give out to the world years later the power of podcasting. Who would have thought? Okay, so I'm just saying, I can hear it, I can see it, I know it's coming. I don't know when it's coming, but a person of your knowledge and your expertise, you're gonna have to put it in an ebook or a book in order for you to be able to handle the onslaught of so many people who want to work with you. You're gonna have to do it, because I had to do it. You're gonna have to do it. So
no, I love it. You know what? And so here's what's funny. I actually did. I am part of. So I am a published author, and just like you talked about collaborating, so I did collaborate. As a matter of fact, March 8th, I believe, will be the 2-year anniversary of the book. It's Upward Leadership Lessons for Women on the Rise. So I am part of that collaboration. So that I can say I am a published author. However, my book is coming. And I'll tell you, so kind of going back to the steps or the things that you do, I can see it happening, because working with my coach, she's pushing me to write more. Right. And really to dig into the writing, which that's just something that, another one of those things, like, oh my God, I need to get my mind wrapped around. You need me to write something, you know? And so I have to get my mind around that, but I'm allowing it, because I know it's setting me up for something else. It's preparing me for something else. So I'm leaning into it. So that book is not too far behind.
Oh, I already know. I'm just putting it out there in the air too, just like the speaker was put out in the air in your twins. I'm putting it out now. Okay. And so it's going to definitely happen. But I want to just thank you for taking the time to stop by the Tina Ramsey Show on tonight, and also share with us why you started your podcast, and why you are a public speaker, and why you chose a very specific niche of empowering women of color, and sharing your story, and how it's going full circle, and it's leading you into places that you can see, and also places that you are not able to see yet, that other people on the outside looking in, from me speaking with you, I can see. And so I thank you for having the courage to just to be you. In this world that we live in, so often people want to be in the representation of who we think we should be, or what we think everyone thinks we should be, but having the power, the confidence, the resilience to walk in your truth, whether it's good, whether it's not as favorable as you desire it to be, that's powerful. And the fact that you are not only thinking about yourself, but you're bringing other women along of color to be able to make an impactful, positive message of resilience. So thank you. How do you want people to be able to connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is deneengarrett.com. So you can go there, you can learn more about speaking, and you also can connect with the podcast there as well. And so just real quick about the pivot. So the podcast for 2+ years was called An Intimate Conversation with Women of Color. Well, after going to the Podfest and hearing from one of the speakers, he made a recommendation of changing the name of your podcast to focus on what the main thing is. So for me, the main thing is women of color. So the podcast now is Women of Color, an Intimate Conversation. So that's, so we, you talked about pivots. That's definitely a pivot, a shift in the name.
Love it.
And I have to brag. No, I just have to quickly say this. So on Friday, I received an email from FeedSpot. And so my podcast made the 35 best women empowerment podcasts. And so that's huge, right? Because thank you. Because like I said, I'm about empowering women of color. And then for me to make a list of women empowerment podcasts, I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
That lets you know that you're walking on the right line of you're in line with your purpose. When you're in line with your purpose, things just happen as long as you keep moving. I tell everyone, you don't have to move. You don't have to be the fastest mover in the whole group. You don't even have to be the slowest, but you do have to keep moving. Life's going to throw different things at you at different times. But the key to all of this is never stop moving, whether it's slow, whether it's fast, whether it's somewhere in the middle. Never stop moving. Okay, no matter how hard it gets. And podcasting is something that progressively grows with you if you allow it to, and it can birth out so many different opportunities that can surpass your biggest, wildest thoughts. And that's what it did for me. That's why I tell people podcasting is very, very powerful when utilized the right way. And having the right knowledge and the right individual around you to grow and scale up the right way, it can really go from you not being known at all to you being a small town or a large town sensation. It just opens so many doors for me, and I see how it can open up so many doors for other people. So if you have not yet started a podcast, for all of you people out there, I know you're watching and you've been sitting on the idea for years. And you're like, I don't know, it's someone I want to listen to it. Let me tell you something. Everybody on the face of this earth has a group of people that you are here to help. Okay?
Yes.
Everybody. I don't care who you are. Everybody. And so how can you get to those people? By using the power of podcasting. How can you help more people? By getting on shows like her show. If you want to empower, start doing the homework and then put in the work, okay? So reach out to our featured guest for all the different things that she has to offer. Make sure to tune in to her podcast on all different podcasting platforms all the way around, and check out on them different stages that she's going to be speaking on. Make sure to check it out. And make sure to also check out the Power of Podcasting event that's going to be happening in Atlanta, Georgia, that you all can take part in by going buying your tickets from CTR Media Network, where we're going to have experts on the panel from media, PR, marketing, branding, and also a business therapist, because you got to get your mind together, honey. You have to get your mind together. And so all this is done for you. And make sure to go ahead and pick up your book about the power of podcast, a pre-order, because it's going to be coming out a little bit later on this year. So make sure to go and check out our featured guest. Here's her website right here. And make sure, if you guys looking for a public speaker, that's your girl. Go ahead and give her a call. She said, make her offer that she can't refuse. You heard it. And check her out on LinkedIn. Check her out on Facebook, and make sure to hit that subscribe and follow button so that you can get empowered, because all of us need affirmations, motivation, and be in a circle with positivity. So she's empowering, so why not click subscribe? Okay, so thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I look forward to seeing you up in these podcast streets and getting to know you a little bit better. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Tina. Bye, everybody.
No problem.
A really great experience on the Tina Ramsey show. I felt like she really asked some valuable questions that can help a lot of people, especially in regards to monetizing. And so the vibe was great. I honestly wouldn't mind coming back on again if she invite me. And I felt like the conversation just flowed. So I am super happy, and I can't wait for the show to air on every single platform out there. And thank you again.
Aluva G-Burn is an all-in-one weight loss supplement. If you're looking at a weight loss supplement as a whole, in my opinion, you have to target 5 or 6 different areas. And Aluva G-Burn does that. And it's the highest quality ingredients with the best absorption technologies with the highest bioavailability in each and every ingredient.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm 47 years old. I teach musical theater classes to children, and I have been using Aluva G-Burn for a couple months now. I have 4 kids. And it seems like with each pregnancy, I gained a little more weight, a little more weight, a little more weight. And it's so frustrating to try to get that weight off. You know, I'm just hungry all the time. I crave stuff that I shouldn't be eating. I've tried everything and nothing has worked. But as soon as I started Aluva G-Burn, I was finally able to lose the weight. It suppressed my appetite. I wasn't having to snack all day. The cravings were gone. I felt great. I now have the energy to do the things I want to do throughout the day.
Thanks to her, my podcast.
We got it. Reaching 350 million. They tuning in.
CTR Media Network is now accepting new podcasters to join our growing network that's reaching 350 million global listeners. Have you heard? CTR Media Network offers podcast production, podcast training, distribution, and product placement. Book us for your next event or schedule an interview with CTR Media Network podcasters today. To learn more, go to ctrmedianetwork.com.